Okay, so we ran out of time there, and I was starting to type pretty fast. Or I don't know, I guess it was fast. Maybe to some people it's fast, maybe to some people it's not. But we had sort of bolted on most of the functionality for the decreasing of the point. We left out a colon right here. We're going to go back over this just to make sure there's no syntactical errors. We have our point right here. We have our housekeeping. We're deallocating. We registered a new symbol, so we're going to unregister that new symbol. Decrease point. All right. So let's just go over this. I'm not going to talk about it, but I just want to go over it and make sure that I think I have it right. We have a new ALB for decrease point. We're injecting decrease point. We have a new label for entry decrease, label process, label return, register the injection point, our memory. We have our new decrease point, logic, jump to the decrease point of the process, process decrease, there's the code, jump to return, there's the ALB, there's the inject, jump to entry, jump to the return, we disable it, we get the inject, original code, housekeeping. All right. I like to leave a blank line at the end of my scripts. I don't know why. But another sort of stylistic thing that I do is I will put one line in between sort of logical separations of things, and then I will put two new lines between what I consider to be entirely different categories. So, I mean, we're doing some meta stuff and registering symbols and labels and whatnot. And then down here, we're actually basically defining, all the content of our new memory. So I separate that by two spaces. The injection points are, pretty much completely separate from the memory. So I had two spaces there. The disable is totally separate from the enable sections and any logic that's up there. Two spaces. Housekeeping, one space. So I don't know. That's just how I roll. So let's enable script. So now just to sort of talk about the delay and the hang here, we're now doing two AOB scans. So that is the equivalent of going up here. Just do FF is a terrible thing, but let's go to new scan, doing a first scan. It's the equivalent of the time that it's going to take to do two full AOB scans. The cheat engine does not combine them in any substantive way as far as I know. Maybe it will and people can correct, or maybe it does and people can certainly correct me on that. But as far as I know, it does. Whenever you do an AOB scan, it pulls out the pattern. It does a first scan, then it pulls out the second pattern in your next AOB scan, and it does a whole new scan and then first scan for obvious reasons, I would say. But so the more AOB scans you add to your script, the longer it's going to take Cheat Engine to actually enable that script, because it has to scan the memory a multiple of times that is equivalent to how many AOB scans you're doing. So if you do AOB scan, if you have two AOB scans, it's going to have to scan the whole process or the whole memory associated with this process twice. Three AOB scans, it'll have to scan three times, so on and so forth, ad infinitum. So let's enable our script. Again, now there's sort of a noticeable delay between the actual enable and disable. And you can see that we are actually at where the decrease assembly instruction was, and now it is stomped on, clobbered, whatever you want to say, by our jumps. We could follow this. Let's follow it. Now we get some more jumps and some other stuff and things like that. And basically here, our script in assembly code, the logic of our script in assembly code is right here. This is our script in assembly. Isn't that pretty awesome? So we can add points, we can remove points. Game still functions fine. No, let's do that. Let's go back in our memory viewer. Go back to decrease point. I'm going to close that. So let's disable our script. There we go. Let's go back. Add, subtract, add, subtract. Game still functions fine. It is not crashing. Our script seems solid. So let's comment this out so that when we spend a point, it doesn't change. And let's comment that out so when we decrease a point, it doesn't change. We'll hit OK. We will enable the script. Obviously, it's going to take a second or two because AOB scan. We add nothing. We remove nothing. This value is essentially immutable now. We've clobbered the logic of the game. I don't want to say logic, but we've basically clobbered the instructions that the game is using to modify this value. I mean, you could. It doesn't matter. It is in no, and this goes without saying, but this is in no way limited to how much you add or you remove. Like, it's just a generic routine in memory that is being called and executed to modify this value. We've stomped on that and basically gotten rid of it. So it doesn't matter what you add or what you remove, this value will never change. So let's, maybe screw around here a little bit, do something a little more interesting. Let's say we just want, anytime you click add or you click minus, let's just set this to 100. Can we do that? How do we do that? It's really, really easy. It's really, really easy. If you've been sort of following along and have any idea what we're doing here, then here's what you're going to do. You're going to say, well, I know that this is the value. We don't, do we have to type 6 zeros? No. I generally do not like to, because it's just cruft. It's just added fluff that has no real purpose. Cheat engine, the computer, the processor, it knows what you mean when you just do that. Anyone, I'm not going to say anyone, but if you insist on typing it out as 8 bytes, or is it 8? Whatever. If you insist on typing it out as 4 bytes or whatever the word size on your machine is, you're just wasting your time. Because there's no functional difference at all. What I would say though is that I do it in multiples of 2. So if there is if it was like that, I would not leave off the trailing 0. I always make it 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever you want to say. And that is just because one hexadecimal digit doesn't equal 1 byte. I like to sort of round it up to bytes so that anyone with sort of a basic understanding of the stuff can look at it and say, well, there's 4 hexadecimal digits. That's obviously 2 bytes. And so again, I don't like to use odd numbers when it comes to digits like that. I always use even or multiples of 2 if you want to say it like that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do plus E0 EAX. But we don't want to do that. Let's just we want to put 100 in that value. So what are we going to do? Well, we are, as I talked about in the previous videos, but it is worth reiterating here. When you're dealing with assembly script and things like that, it is always hexadecimal. It is never decimal. There are ways that cheat engine facilities that it provides where you can sort of just say, well, like int 100 or something like that. I don't want to deal with that. We are going to just pull up a calculator, say 100 in decimal. What is 100 in decimal or hexadecimal? It's 64. So what are we going to do? We're going to put 64. And that's it. We're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to go move EBX. We're going to go move EBX E0 and 64. On a stylistic note as well, I always capitalize my hexadecimal. I will never do that. Oops. I will never do that. Again, no functional difference whatsoever, but it is a convention that I just follow. I don't know. I'm arbitrary in that respect. We're gonna hit OK. Let's enable script. Takes a second. So now if our logic is sound, when we click plus, this will become 100. There you go. When we click minus, this will push 100 into this value, but it's already 100, so you won't notice any difference at all. But let's maybe make it a little more clear. So let's see, what do we got? 64. What's something that I know is 15? Nope, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna do that. All right. So when we spend a point, we're gonna get 100 because 64 in hexadecimal is 100. When we click the minus button over here, we can't really do that because it's well, we can, but it is worth noting that when you go back in and you're doing like rapid edits to your script, like we're starting to get into now, make sure it's disabled. Like, I mean, we're in here now and I'm screwing around and it's enabled. None of your changes are going to be reflected or maybe they will be reflected, but it is generally good practice to disable your script before you do edits. That being said, what are we doing? We are decreasing, or we are changing what is pushed into this value when we decrease the point. What is F? F is 15. So let's hit OK. Let's see if it actually happens. It does not. So let's disable the script. Let's re-enable the script. Again, takes a second. Now let's click minus. There you go. That is why you do not want to edit your script when it is enabled, because you generally will not see results. Um, Anything else interesting we can do? I don't know. You could at this point, if you're the only thing that you are interested in is pushing some constant value into available karma, then you're done. From here, you could just plug in, pick some number, convert it to hexadecimal, stuff that value in here. But we'll kind of demonstrate a little bit more what we're talking about. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as I like to say. Okay, I'm not sure if that's the exact saying. I don't know why you would want to skin a cat, but anyway, there are more than one ways to attack this problem. So what we were doing right here is we were pushing some literal value into this memory location, ESI plus E0, and down here we were pushing the value of the register EAX into the memory location of EBX plus E0. In the event that we say, let's sort of pretend here for a minute and say, well, we couldn't change this instruction. So what would we do? Well, all you have to do is just make a new instruction where you change EAX. So let's go EAX 64. And we'll do EAX. What do we have? F. So let's do that. So what is going on now? Well, we're producing the same exact results, or presumably we will produce the same exact results. We're just attacking it in a different way, so that whenever, and again, we're editing the script when it's enabled, which is terrible practice. So I have a real problem in that regard. We're just sort of, saying, well, let's not mess with this instruction. All we have to do is change the value of EAX before this instruction is evaluated. So let's hit OK, disable the script, re-enable the script. Let's hit plus. We have 100. Let's hit minus. We have 15. Plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. There you go. So, why is that important? It is important because when you get into you will find yourself, let's disable it. You will find yourself in certain scenarios where you just are not able to sort of inject on a certain instruction and clobber it outright, such as we have done with this script. What you will find yourself, the situations that you will find yourself in, is that you have to sort of think about what is actually being done in this instruction, and then I want to sort of inject on a previous instruction and modify some parameter of the instruction I'm really interested in. I'll inject up here and change EAX, assuming that EAX is not modified between here and here. In this case, it is, but again, we're sort of just making this up and talking about it conceptually. What you will do is you will modify it up here, and then who cares what goes on in in the intervening instructions, as long as EAX is not modified. Then it'll hit this instruction to move EAX into wherever, and you have already basically fixed the value of EAX to be whatever you want. And so you will still make profit without actually having to modify that instruction. And that is a good approach to have, or just sort of a good tool to have in your toolbox when it comes to messing around with assembly and stuff. When you say there was a jump right after this, and then you try to code inject right on this point, there are some situations, such as jump boundaries is what we will call them, where if the subsequent instruction is a jump, it becomes kind of difficult. It's just one situation, but it becomes kind of difficult to clobber the instruction immediately preceding it, and that's a terrible example. But suffice to say, there are times when you will not be able to jump on an immediate instruction that you are interested in, and you'll just sort of look at the context and say, well, obviously there's instructions before the one that I'm interested in. So what I'll do is I'll just, go up a couple instructions and I'll inject up here and then change the value that is manipulated with the instruction that I really want to mess with. And again, that sort of approach is a general rule and a very good rule to have and keep in mind when you are messing around with this kind of stuff.